But I appreciate that that is not always the case now. There are times when your children will take you to the limit and you think, just get me out of here. Where you don't just want to walk, you want to run. You want to get out because you think, I have failed, I cannot keep doing this. All I had was scraped knees and nettle rash. Sometimes the problems of life with children can be far more complex today. I want to tell you this morning, stay the course. Stay put. Because there are moments in our society which are governed by people who feel abandoned. And their personalities reflect the feeling, I don't care, I'm not having a relationship with anyone because I'm too worried that you will leave me just like everyone else did. We need people who will stand up to the plate and say, whatever happens, I'm not going anywhere. I will stay here. If you remember one phrase from this morning, stay firm, stay strong, stay put. Everything in society will give you options why you shouldn't do that. Why we have to be accommodating and a bit wishy-washy. God forbid, stay firm, stay strong, stay put. Because what we have to remember is that God is always there. Isn't that a lovely picture? God is always there. Even when we feel we can't be, we must draw strength from the fact that he is always there. When the Bible was written, it was written to a people who believed in idolatry. Idols you could touch with your hands and make from your own imagination. But they would always be distant and far away. Our God came. God the Father sent the Son came, the Holy Spirit inhabited him, and then was spread to the ends of the earth. He came for you and for me, and promised that he would always, always be there. Doesn't matter if you know him or not, he will always be there. Doesn't matter if you love him or not, he will always be there. It says in Joshua 1:5, I will never leave you nor forsake you. I've heard this so many times. We just trip it off the tongue, don't we? I will never leave you nor forsake you. And I started to meditate on it word by word. Good discipline. Grab a verse this week and think long and hard of it, word by word. I. Who's talking? God is talking. I. God didn't send a committee. Aren't you glad about that? He didn't have a focus group to check that it was a good idea. He made a personal investment in your salvation. I will. We talk often about the will of God, and I don't know what God's will is. It simply means choice. What does God choose? He has chosen not to leave you. Isn't that awesome? Despite what you do, he's chosen not to go. Do you know, as a counselor, I hear many buzz phrases, and it's always interesting when someone comes to talk to me and tries out the latest psychological buzz phrase, just in case I don't know it. Sometimes I don't, but sometimes I do. One of the most interesting one is, well, you see, I have commitment issues. Sorry, I preach in Welsh, you have to understand my... But a commitment issue, what is that? I choose not to do things. I choose not to get too close. Can I say most lovingly, God never has and never will have a commitment issue. Are you glad about that? Yeah. He doesn't have to think, ooh, not sure about that one. Really not sure. I will. Never does what it says on the tin. It's not that somehow you will do something that today makes the difference and breaks the straw on the camel's back of God. It's not possible. I will never leave you. Interesting, the Hebrew word means to relinquish or leave destitute. The truth is, without God, all of us are destitute. but he came so that you would never be left destitute. I will never leave you. He's not only talking about Barbie Jackson, you know. He's never going to leave her, but he's never going to leave us either. And the word forsake is an interesting Hebrew word. I won't go into it now this morning, but it means to fail, be slothful, weak, or faint. Let me tell you, not one of those things describes God. God cannot fail. He doesn't need sleep. How many of you as parents are desperate for sleep? God doesn't need it. And that's not because he works 72-hour shifts like some of these glorious doctors and you think, am I really safe in your hands? Yes. In God's hands, you are always safe because he does not need sleep and he doesn't work shifts. He is not weak and he cannot faint, even when you think you will. So the importance of being there is absolutely crucial. But then there's another quality that mums have. Unconditional love. Now, do you know, we may not always like as parents, but we will always love. I used to think, that's a contradiction. No. Not at all. Not a contradiction. Now, I have an unconditional love towards these two. Thank you for that wonderful response. My son is thinking, uh-oh. I have to say at this point, I did talk through with Chris and Andrew what I was going to share this morning. And I have their permission to use this, because I know as a preacher's kid, you know, you can use all sorts of anecdotes about your own family, which sometimes is nice and sometimes can be a little bit of a pain. But when I tell you about this, it's not to build up my ego, it's to tell you that life is very real. I kind of know some of what I'm talking about. I wouldn't share it with you. But of all of the pictures of my two sons, Chris is the left, his is the brown hair, Andrew is the right. This was taken when they were about 6 and 3. Yeah? Of all the pictures I could have chosen, I don't know if you can spot, but Chris has a scrape on his nose, on his chin, and on his cheek. Andrew, absolutely angelic, isn't he? Chris will tell you that he is probably the more active of my two sons. Yes? Yes, he's nodding at me. Andrew is the thinker. We will be sweating like crazy doing tasks, and Andrew will stand there and say, there is a better way of doing this. The really annoying thing is he's usually right. That is so annoying. But very early on, Andrew kind of twigged, even at 3, that he was probably never going to be as fast as Christopher. And Chris loved to run. He would run when we were out. He would run around the house just for the sheer sake of running. And he would just run and run and run. Andrew would watch him. Out would go the foot. Chris would go, phew! Have you noticed that enigmatic smile on Andrew's face? The number of times he tripped Chris up. And Chris used to go, oh. And I would come down and say, Andrew, stop doing that. Sorry, Mum. Sorry, Mum. Then he'd look at you. And you knew in his mind he was going, yes. I know what it's like to have kids who play you up. But you know what? About a year after this photograph was taken, we were told on the same day that both of them had Asperger's syndrome. It's a form of autism. They both got it, but they both demonstrate it in incredibly difficult ways. Do I know what it's like to go through tough times as a mum? Oh, yes. Do I know what it's like to try and love your child unconditionally, despite what they do, despite endless meetings in hospitals with educational psychologists who come to your house and ask you why you peel potatoes in that way? Oh, I've had that. You're supposed to be observing my son and you're asking me how I peel potatoes, as if that is relevant to them? Oh, yes. When we've had to fight tooth and nail on the last days of term for our kids, who were saying they will never, they cannot, they will always be this. The only person I trust with the word always or never is God. I know what it's like to have to give unconditional love when it's really hard. In fairness to them, they don't quite look like that anymore. There they are. Chris and Andrew.